day. Time was well spent, that's when I knew that I need to spend my life here with you. Not in the fast lane, I understand that you've been broken too many times, but I'll be waiting to mend your wounds from all you've taken. But if we listen to each other, admit our mistakes, then I can show you who I am, because I'm not the same. I'm better with you. I'm better with you. I'm better with you. Catch me when I fall, and I will keep you off the ground. That's when I am.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the 14th episode of HLTV confirmed season 2. I still guess we called it for some reason, even though we just keep on piling the episodes. Thanks for joining in, everyone. The chat's already going, I see, which is great. We have some pretty amazing guests for this round of HLTV confirmed. On my left is Joe Cardelli, Tolkien Fanatic, owner of S2.E14. Hey, Joe, what's up?
How's it going?
Also, Striker, one of the usual suspects here, and then none other than out on the far right flank, we have God himself. Hunden, what's up? Oh, can he hear us?
Yeah, hello. Not much, sorry.
So, is there a delay, or did you have to think about how you wanted to?
I decided to fuck it up in the first time.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so Nikolai joins us for the 14th episode. Thanks so much for the... We can say, I guess, at the last minute, because we asked you this afternoon if you wanted to come on. One of the reasons why we wanted you on was actually because we're going to be talking about the EPL Finals, which happens to be in your hometown this week and weekend. I suppose you're going to the Pro League Finals?
Yeah, I'm going to watch the finals. I also did that last year, and it's also to see all the best teams in the world playing here in my hometown.
So Attacks will play? Is that what you're saying?
No, they're not good enough.
Oh. So we have a lot of subjects to talk about, guys, for tonight. We're going to be looking at the EPL finals and also looking back at the events this weekend: SuperNova Malta and DreamHack Winter Reunion shipping. I know we're going to have problems with you, Striker, especially because since we have the EPL finals in Odense, which is what it's called, and we also have HUNDEN, which is the same sounding D in his name.
And you know what? I don't give a fuck about either.
All right. Well, usually you're after us for that. Anyway, so let's jump right into it with some talk with you, Hunden. Thanks for joining us again. You're in alternate attacks now, but it's been a weird couple of weeks. Let's just start off with that. Your Twitter has been a little bit hard to read, I guess, as it pertains to what's going on in the team. Some are coming in, some are coming out. Then one player was out for a while, and you've kind of teased a little bit what's going on. Can you finally give us the lowdown on what's happening with you and alternate attacks?
Overall, I have never been happy with the results we have done. We decided to set some kind of goals for what we wanted to do with the team, but we never did it, and we never tried enough. We didn't try hard enough to make our results or anything. So at the end of October, in the beginning of November, I decided I didn't want to extend my contract for 2019. So from the end of this year, I'm not going to play with alternate attacks anymore.
So you left the team then?
Yeah, I decided to leave the team because I don't think we are on the same page right now, and I'm pretty sure some of the players will be top players later on, but right now they don't want to work enough, in my opinion.
But it's not like you didn't win anything while being there. You had the 99 damage tournament and the Meisterchef also. Walk us through. It was September 17, right, when you joined the team, coming from Denmark. What's it been like for you being in that team?
I think it was pretty tough in the beginning, but I think we had a really good player in Tizian, who's playing for Big now, and we won the first Meisterchef I played. And I was really, really happy about how we was approaching the game, how we was working and all those things. But when Tizian got sold in January, we couldn't find the right replacement for him. He was the support player for the team, and there was no support players we could find in Germany, so it was hard for us, and we never found a solution for Tizian. So that was pretty sad, in my opinion.
I remember when you went there, you were anxious to see how far you can take a German team, but also you commented on some of the events and some of the tournaments that are available for German teams. Do you think that, I mean, you explored what there was to explore in Germany, and is that why you're also coming home?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think if we had the right team, and to be honest, I think we was on the right things with signing Tensky and signing ENCE, the old G2 coach analyst. But overall, I think the core of the team was that we tried too much, and people started to fight each other, started to whine about each other's mistakes, and I don't think we could fix it without making more lineup changes. And I didn't want to do that, so I think I wanted to try to come home to Denmark and see if I could find a team here and play for a Danish team again.
So how's that going? I mean, because that's obviously the next question. Do you know what you're going to be doing after January?
Not right now. Right now, I'm looking into some offers I have, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But I think I will end up on a Danish team in the beginning of January.
And already seeing someone in the chat stating the obvious here, because if you didn't see this on HLTV, we broke the news that Refresh from Fraxters is breaking with the team and it's going to go elsewhere. So my first question for you, even when we joined the TeamSpeak before, was, so I guess that's where you're going. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I can do that. If I had the chance to play with Refresh, I would love to do that. But right now, we are not going to the same place. He's a really good player, and I'm surprised to see him leaving Fraxters right now. But I think it was in the cards when Bubski decided to lead the team as well. So I think Fraxters is done now, and 3 of their players also needs to find a new team, I guess.
Yeah, and I know they're looking for offers, all of them. So, but I thought they were actually getting close to signing with someone, and they said they were very keen on staying together. And yes, we're going elsewhere, but this is not the end of the lineup. And then they already had the one change, and then everything kind of seemed to disintegrate, which I think is a real shame if you look at what they actually did. I'm curious to see whether those kinds of players can fit in anywhere else. But so I take it it's not going to be under your wings, huh?
Nope.
There was actually, and I want Joe as well as you, Milan, you feel free to ask questions for Nikolai here. There's a lot of questions when we announced that you were going to come on the show, especially for you. Especially one, I want to take up this one. I'm really interested in how you develop a kind of resilience against the shit talks and memes around you. And this is obviously the God thing, which I also admit to taking part in. You yourself know what you've done for the CSGO scene, and especially in developing young talents. For me, you're a great example for someone who refuses to quit. Well played, says Raj. It's actually a sentiment or a question that was repeated a couple of times in the Twitter thread. How do you feel about becoming that meme?
I think it was really, really hard in the beginning. I pretty much lost all my confidence back in the SK days. So I also decided to leave the SK team. They didn't want to kick me. They couldn't find a better in-game leader than me. But I couldn't lead the team anymore. I was sad every day I met up because people was making fun with me all the time. But after 6 months or something like that, I started to use it as a confidence boost. Like, if they think I'm bad, then I'm just going to play more deathmatch and work harder on my own game. And I think I've improved a lot after the meme came out. And overall, it's hard to fight with the meme, but I also think it's funny now. It doesn't affect me anymore, I guess.
So when you see 100 comments on HLTV, when we say that you're going to be on the show that only says God, you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that now, yeah.
Okay. So this one's from a user called Nicoholic, and you can guess what his profile picture is. There's a lot of these guys out there. Since people are praising the Danish scene for their so-called structured style and the excellence of their in-game leaders from various tiers of teams, what are the main traits that make a Danish IGL? And this is also considering you've played with some of them, or people that became IGLs later on, for example, Glaive and Astralis. It's something that's often talked about, right? The Danish structure style, or that we have many IGLs. Is it something you can comment on? What is actually a Danish IGL?
It's an in-game leader who is the leader of the team, who is the captain of the team. In Danish teams, we use a lot of time on being alone on the server, talk about the gameplay, and talk about the strats, how to do them, how to change the strats, how to find new flashes, new things, watch demos. And most likely the in-game leader is doing that, and the players is just playing. But since we started this structure, me and Leif, back in 2011, everyone have become full-time players, so everyone can work hard on the playstyle now, and we got even more time to practice now, even though Astralis took it to the next level, far above what me and Leif did in the beginning. But overall, it's like having an in-game leader who is also the captain of the team, who is trying to make the game plan as perfect as possible.
So I guess just to throw it over to some of the other guys on the panel, is that something that you can see that's coming up in for example, Joe, in a scene, or that's still missing, or do you see them? Do you see them actually? Oh, you kind of filled out my little tease there. Is that something? Is it also talk among NA teams? Oh, we want to play the Danish way, or?
No, not that I've heard. I mean, we're pretty stuck playing our way, which is not super great and not yielding a lot of results. We're doing okay at the top level. We have our liquid, our energy. Cloud9 has obviously taken a steep tumble from where they were at the beginning of the year. But on the lower level, there's really a lack of true in-game leaders to the point where you see that Sean Gares and his pub team were able to perform very, very well in MDL this season, and so to my mind that speaks of a real lack of structure. So in some ways we might be regressing actually.
What about Hunden going to NA? Wouldn't that be quite the solution for you, Nikolai?
I don't know. Never thought about that, but I'm not sure if I agree with you, Joe, because I think Liquid is playing with a lot of strats now. They play very structured if you look into them. Also energy. And you can see the top teams of NA, they play really, really smart now, and they don't go for all the YOLO peaks anymore, even though they have some really, really good players, all of them.
Yeah, no, surely at the top end of the scene, the top end of the scene is closing in on Europe and Denmark specifically, at a rate that we have not seen previously. But we're not seeing that same acceleration at the lower levels, I would say, on the whole.
So, actually, we have Don Hachi was actually asking questions as well, and this is for him, I think, pretty positive. And it's not about us not giving the MVP to Dupree this time, because it seems to be the only thing he really cares about. It's for you also, Nikolai. What primary differences are there when playing with younger players who have talent and players who've been around for quite a while? Do the youngsters tend to obey more? I guess that's fitting for you as the IGL.
I'm not sure about that. Some of the old players also like to listen to me when I talk to them. But I think with the young players, I think they really want to work hard. They want to achieve something all the time. And if you pick up an older player, they might be done with playing CS already. They might have been kicked from one of the better teams, and then they ask me, can we play together? Yeah, we can do that. But then they don't want to work hard. They don't want to prove themselves again. So I think the younger players, when I decide to pick up a younger player, he already played for some decent teams in Denmark. So it's not like I find a player on the public servers or anything. I pick up the good players from the less better teams in Denmark when I do that. I also try to do that with Keto in Germany in Alternate Attacks. But I'm not sure how good it worked out. I think he improved, but I think he could have improved even more if he wanted to work that hard.
But so I guess that's something you still want to do. Can you tell us how you kind of got into that whole thing? Because it's been kind of your thing, bringing up young players. And you also talked about, I think last year, how it would sometimes annoy you that they would then get picked up. I mean, how did you end up being that kind of a player instead of, because you came up with some of the people who are now the big stars and even some who retired now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think everything started when I left SK. I took 1 month off completely, not opening HLTV, not opening my Twitter or anything. And then I got a message from Config and Yugi if I wanted to play with them. And I was like, I don't want to play anymore. I'm done with this. Finally, I got a full-time contract, but I couldn't handle it because I was not happy playing and I was not confident at all. So I took few practice with them, and I really got the motivation up again, and I found my fire. Like, now I can show the younger players how to beat the better teams. And after 1 month, Config got into SK, and I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to work out. And I think after 3 months in my Danish mixed teams, recent gaming and stuff like that, I think we won against SK, and I was so happy because I left that team because I didn't feel confident on it.
And we also quoted you saying after I think some of the players left for Heroic that you were getting kind of tired of that as well. Do you feel like that there isn't enough recognition for people like you who do this, who take that kind of a backseat approach and become the leader of men who bring up the young players?
I'm not sure about that. I think people is good to notice when I find a new talent, and I don't want to take all the credits, because most likely the younger players is working really, really hard, but they got the firepower. They just need a right direction to go, and I try to guide them to that way. And after a few months, few weeks, they might be picked up by a better team, and I think that is totally fine with me right now.
I'm gonna butt in for a second if you don't mind. I just wanted to ask about whether, well, we've always heard about the Danish or Denmark just generally having a lot of talent and just like continuously coming up with young players, new players. So what do you think this is down to? Obviously, Denmark is a pretty small country. There's not that like not a large pool of players, but there seems to be a lot of quality. So do you feel like it's like down to people like you kind of bringing them up, or what do you think is the reason?
Yeah, I think it's good to have some players who wants to guide them to the right direction. I think if they start with this playstyle we have here in Denmark, on the less good teams, I think they get used to it much faster, and I think it's a good way to do it. And we also have a player like Barry who's not playing for any good teams anymore, but he's also good at guiding the new players, and then he writes me like, oh, look at this talent, maybe you could pick up him and stuff like that. So I think it's a way to, like, they go from Barry, they go to me, and then Uptake, Heroic, whatever, might pick them up later on.
Do you get like a cut in all of this? Is that something you ever thought about?
I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
I have actually said that if I'm going to sign a contract with a Danish organization, I want to get a cut of it, because it's a lot of money they get from selling these players, and I think I deserve some kind of money for it right now.
Why not just become a full-time agent, like do it like they do in American pro sports? I think Joe can attest to that. There should be a lot of money in that, right?
Oh yeah, shoe deals, everything.
Well, no, for real. Like now that you're 27 years old and you're standing at a new fork in the road, where you're trying to find out what to do, isn't that something that you would actually consider doing? I mean, stepping out of the scene completely, or at least on the playing side, and then doing something like that?
Yeah, I would love to do that when I'm done with playing, like being an agent or something like that, if someone wants to hire me for those things. But I think I'm the right guy to pick up for a job like that. So when I'm done playing, I'm looking into what kind of offers I'm getting and opportunities. So that could be really, really funny to do afterwards.
I mean, you have to imagine that, as more money comes into the scene and we see these organizations kind of build out their support staff, right? Like, surely one of these big Danish orgs would be able to find room for you as a coach or an analyst or a general manager or whatever, right? People keep on inventing new positions for their esports organizations and teams to have day by day, it seems. So I would be surprised if you went unemployed for very long if you decided to hang up your mouse.
I mean, talent scout seems like a pretty good title for Hunden to be like. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I think that's still a few months or at least years away. Because Joe, don't you think that that there's some of these sponsors coming in would want to see a bigger return before actually loading enough money into it that this could become a viable career choice? I mean, I know I was the one to start the subject, but like when you see how little money that's actually being made off of esports fans, CS:GO fans, that's still a while away for orgs to have enough money to do this.
I mean, it depends on the org, right? I mean, North have very good backing behind them. Obviously, Refresh and Astralis have very good backing. They're announcing sponsorship deals on the order of millions of dollars, every couple of months. And they also do a great job of monetizing themselves, even outside of that. Like in the Danish equivalent of Toys R Us or whatever, I see you guys have Astralis plushies and the whole 9 yards. So if we get more orgs kind of operating on that level and bring it into the mainstream, then there's tons of opportunities.
I think one of the most viral stories that came out of esports this year was the McDonald's that's close to the Royal Arena in Copenhagen. Did you guys see that? Where they made a whole banner of menus that then had some kind of connection to CS:GO.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so you could always do that. Make the Danish CS orgs be better at doing advertisement like that, or at least take off their money for that. So let's just jump into the the next topic here, guys. Because and this one, I actually didn't change this one, Striker, just to piss you off. Because we want to talk about Liquid SuperNova CS:GO Malta win, which we obviously covered for HLTV.org. For me, this is a breaking of the curse of the grand final, because I feel like this was one of those events where we once again talked about whether they would drop off in the final, and I was sure of it too, but then they didn't. But I know you wanted to kind of discuss this in another way, right?
Well, I mean, you can't really talk about them breaking the curse when we've already seen them win an event very similar to this competition-wise. We saw, obviously, it was with the previous lineup when Steel was still in the lineup before Taco came in, and that was Summit. But yeah, as I was talking about it, the competition was very similar at those two events, so I feel like this doesn't really change anything in terms of Liquid. If anything, I just see it as a tournament that they just really had to win. Like, if they didn't win it, like, sure, you always have those, like, people calling them chokers when they lose a final to Astralis, but I mean, it is Astralis after all. Like, you have to take that into consideration as well. But when it comes to these smaller events, like, people will not see it as an impressive result, if they win, because they were so heavily favored, and there was basically just energy who are somewhat of a danger to them. So I feel like they still have long ways to go before we can say that they're breaking a curse.
What are your feelings about this, Joe? Do you think this is the beginning of something better, or do you feel the same way as him?
I mean, you know me, I'm Mr. NA, so I mean, I'm glad that Liquid got a win, but I agree with Striker that I don't consider this kind of breaking a curse, right? Because the curse, when we think about it and put it in context, is really the big event, the big arena curse, right? And while they did do this in front of a crowd, it's certainly not on the order of magnitude as we saw at the major, or we'll see, you know, in Katowice next year, or Cologne, or anything like that. So, Liquid's main bugaboo is still Astralis, just like pretty much every other team in the world right now. So they're going to have to find a way to go through them unless they drop off precipitously.
You see that happening though? Like, because we were also talking about whether this team needs a lineup change to fix things, or but then also kind of went into the well, who should they replace and who would they actually go to? What about you, Hun? What do you think about this team? I mean, it's got to be the beginning of something at least, because I know that they were talking about now we just have to win something, right?
I really think the Liquid team is really, really good. Also, if you look at the tactical side of the team, it seems like they're improving all the time, and then they get to the final and then they lose. Everything is just falling apart. I'm not sure why, but I think they got some kind of the same thing as TSM had back in the days, where they always went to the semis and then they just got knocked out with Device into pre and stuff like that. So I think they just need more time together. I just think they need to work together and don't do too many lineup changes as they have done in the past. So overall, I think the Liquid team will win some tournaments in the new year, but they will not win in Odense, I guess.
Well, and then I think we know why you'd say that, right?
I say that because Astralis is going to win, right?
Okay, so we can kind of skip that when we get to that part now, I guess. You kind of killed one whole topic there.
Sorry.
That's fine.
No, we can get there. But I mean, obviously, like, Liquid, there's nothing wrong with the team. Like, just in a general sense, there's nothing wrong with their playstyle. Their players, they all have their role. They have a playstyle that makes sense, and they're, like, for any team, they're actually quite structured. So that's just all of it together actually makes me feel like they are a good team, and they are even a great team. It's just the problem that whatever it is, whether it's a mentality thing or like just psychological, there's something that prevents them from winning these finals. And like, I 100% agree with Hunden, and that's just about time and the link to the old TSM lineup. I agree with that too. It's just the same thing. They're also quite young players, especially if you look at Twists. Even Elige, who has been around for longer than Twist, quite a lot longer, is still a young player. So all of that together just makes me feel like give them a little bit more time, maybe like another year, and we'll see where they go from there.
I've used this comparison before, but the whole Astralis Liquid dynamic really reminds me of the Braves and the Yankees in the late 90s. So the Braves and the Yankees were were two, baseball references. Get ready,
Oh,
Euros.
here comes.
So the Braves and the Yankees were two perennially good teams for about 5 years there in the late 90s, early aughts, and by all rights and accounts, the Braves should have won more World Series than they did. The only problem was that they constantly ran into the Yankees in the World Series, and they always lost. So Liquid are the Braves here, and Astralis are the Yankees, obviously the better team. But yeah, I mean, one of these teams is just going to have to fall off naturally. I haven't seen anything from Liquid that's going to suggest that they've cracked the Astralis egg yet.
So what actually happened between those teams? What was then the decider that made this all change? Was it fall off, or now that we're on the reference?
Both teams kind of just fell off precipitously in like 2005, I guess, and yeah, they haven't really run into each other since.
Well, we'll see. There was one curse I think personally I felt was actually broken. If you look at the picture here, look at this man. The MVP for the SuperNova CS:GO. Is that a smile?
I mean, yeah. That's for now. That's definitely a smile.
Great play from this guy. Go ahead, Striker.
Well, no, nothing. What do you want to say?
No, I'm cool. I was just I thought you were kind of getting into to the next point here because
not necessarily.
I wanted to ask you what else did you guys see from that event that kind of makes sense to take on from there? Because on the other side of it, you have NRG kind of also looking pretty good, only losing to Liquid, who they also lost to in I guess in ECS, was it, or IEM?
That was the other way around, actually. Yeah.
And they actually, I think, reached for tonight the highest placing ever at number 6. Really promising, even though Cirque said that they still had problems and he was falling off individually. He posted some pretty big numbers. Joe, what do you think about NRG coming into like the last part of the year?
Yeah, I mean, NRG have been looking good. I don't think they've been looking as good as they would have liked. I talked with Daps, in an interview in Chicago, and he kind of said, we want to make sure that we put in good performances at the end of the year. We don't want to end the year on a bad note, because then they're going to be picking up next year, and well, actually this year they're going to be starting with their Katowice kind of campaign, right? And they want to be on point for that. What seems to continue cropping up for NRG is these ephemeral communication issues that they kind of keep on bringing up, and I don't for the life of me know what they constitute or what they mean, but if they're going to kind of continue their upward climb, then they're going to have to conquer that. And start dropping off is something that I believe we talked about last time on the show. I think we had a topic.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's a little bit discrediting to Cirque because he was so good for so long at kind of the lower level, and then he kind of immediately got jumped up and still has been performing quite well as has the team. So I feel like knocking on him for that adjustment period is a little bit unfair.
I mean, to be fair, like Cirque has actually had a really good month. Like I'm still yet to actually put together the stock shift, but for those who have been actually following it, I'm quite certain that he's going to be on the up, just because this month he has actually looked like where he was in about May, like around the previous ECS finals, where he kind of made his name the first time. So like that I feel like is a pretty good sign for NRG, because if he comes back to his form, and Breezy and Ethan, I almost said it backwards and it would have sounded so stupid. And I mean, whatever. But yeah, if those three are on the same level, then I feel like this team could be really, really dangerous. I'm not saying that they're not necessarily going to become elite. They're somewhere on the edge now, I guess, just right below those elite level teams, and they probably don't really have the experience to get to that level. But they're definitely going to be, if that kind of is the case, where those three just keep on delivering, then they could at least sometimes take series off some of the better teams and at least surprise them that way, even if it's probably not going to turn into some big titles or like big final appearances or anything like that. I just feel like they will be dangerous to that higher level of teams.
I think also like the Cirque thing has to do with kind of his age, and don't want to say immaturity, but at least his lack of life experience and experience. I remember talking to him at ECS5, the finals in London. Kind of a funny interview, but also just really just marred by the fact that he's very young still, and probably has a hard time like staying on that consistent level. I remember, I think now two or three interviews in a row we've done with him where he's been like, "Oh, I'm playing so shit. Everything's just going extremely bad." And you see Smuya doing the same thing. Like even though it's like momentary drop-offs, he'll be like, "I hate myself. I'm so shit." And I remember from myself, like being that age, it's very easy to think like you're extremely bad just off of a single appearance or at least a couple in a row, right? What do you think about that, Hun? Do you think? I mean, and what do you actually say to those young guys who are obviously really talented but have these problems with the consistency and maybe too quick to like get into those negative kind of thoughts?
I think it's important as the leader on the team, like to support them all the time, because if they start talking shit about themselves, start to losing their confidence, they stop doing all the plays they want to do, then they will not win the games. So I think it's important as the leader, and I think Fugly and Debs is doing that as well on the energy team, like supporting the young players on the team, like you're really good, Cirque, even though you had a bad game, you will be good in the next game and stuff like that. So I think it's important to have a good team where all of them can talk to each other and especially support each other when they're going to play the big games, I guess.
Isn't it also kind of like annoying to see? I mean, I think I would feel that way if I was like the leader in a team like that. I know that I'm supposed to be like this not father figure, but at least the good guy in front that appease them and kind of talk them down from those episodes. But like when you have an 18-year-old that's insanely good and can play at that level, it's got to be sometimes a little bit frustrating that they can't see like, dude, you're fine. It's going to be a couple of events and you're going to be back.
Yeah, that's how it is, I guess. If people don't do the big games when they want to do them and they just play a decent game like they would do in 5 out of 10 games, then they start to feel like, I'm not doing my things, I'm not the star right now, what can I do? And they start to doubt themselves, and I think that is normal for a young player, and that's important for as the coach and as the in-game leader of the team, like that they're talking with these players so they keep them confident and they talk about all the good things they also do. Maybe also they do the good things in practice and stuff like that.
Remember, I think I remember specifically Dab saying in an interview with, I don't know if it was it you, Striker, or someone else, where he said like, our problem is actually we don't have enough staff. Like that.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it's important to have.
Yeah, like he'd say, and this was right when they found out that I'm a Pet wouldn't be going to ECS. The day before that came out, Dab said in an interview that, well, the one thing we need is actually a bigger staff that can help us do these kind of things. And I'm just, you were talking about it a little bit, Strike, but I'm just trying to think, how good can this team really be? Because like you said, it's true that they might not be able to top those elite teams yet. And you have to remember in the ranking that we updated today that some of the teams fell off because Stockholm doesn't count any longer in the rankings. But like, do you see anywhere in any future where this team can medal with the likes of Liquid and maybe MIBR?
I mean, like you said, I was kind of touching on it, and I feel like no, they can't. And as I said, like I don't think they will reach, like in the next, say, half a year, I don't think they will reach like an elite level where they can take on like Navi, Liquid FaZe, whatever, those kind of teams on the top level. But they, like I said at the start, I just feel like they will start being a little bit more dangerous as they get a little bit more experience, and maybe they will get some higher placements, and maybe that's what's going to propel them further. Like this is all about experience. I feel like it's not even been that long since we saw this lineup compete at like the top events, and they just continuously gather experience the more they go to. So the more they gather, the better they get, and the closer they get to that level.
I don't know if I agree with you there, because I think the strongest thing that NRG have going for them right now is that they have consistently been able to go toe-to-toe with Liquid, mostly domestically online, but I mean they also have taken wins from them on LAN, and I feel like if they're kind of consistently able to match that level with Liquid, then I mean they have to be on the threshold of something great, don't you think?
I mean, it could be just down to familiarity, right? Because they play each other so much. And I was like, it was actually interesting. I'm trying to figure out who actually said this. Oh, it was YNK, who was kind of talking about how when you play somebody so much that it just kind of creates like a completely different metagame for that specific matchup. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening between Energy and Liquid, because they obviously play each other in North America online quite a lot. They must practice against each other a whole bunch, because there's not that many practice opponents in North America. So that must mean they play each other a lot, even outside of official games. So all of that makes me feel like it's just down to familiarity, because Energy haven't really been able to take like the other top teams to very close results. It's basically just Liquid that they've consistently been going up against and actually taking down every now and again. So that's kind of my thinking there.
Yes, like it's them, and then they have North, who they apparently have to meet at every event.
Well,
right?
yeah, but I mean that's obviously not an elite level team. They just meet every now and again. Yeah.
Oh, you said it. No, I'm fine with that. I'm fine. Let's move on to the next event. Just touching briefly, not very long, on DreamHack Winter that we also saw this weekend go down. I mean, the obvious for me, most interesting story is actually Bravado at that event. Like a South African team actually moving on to the final of at least a tier 2-3 event. It's kind of interesting, and most importantly, they did it after we did a feature on them, and I think that's actually the biggest story of that we didn't jinx them to hell. They actually went all the way, or almost at least, after we wrote a longer story about them. By the way, go check out Lucas's story if you haven't about that. I mean, Joe, you have to be pretty excited to see a team that at least play in NA go that far.
Yeah, I mean, a team from South Africa that plays in North America doing well at an event in Europe. Go figure, who would have been able to script this out? Yeah, I'm stoked for those Bravado guys. What I am upset about, and I already complained to Lucas about this, is that I wanted to write that story on Dust2.us because I have 2 writers in Texas, so we wanted to send people to the house. But we might still work something out during their Katowice campaign. So,
I mean, you have something more to write about now, much more than he did, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, it's very exciting. For me though, in context, like I wrote about this on Twitter a couple times. I think seeing what Bravado can do on land kind of makes it all the sadder that we're not going to see them at least have a chance to get deeper into Pro League, or the path towards Pro League, after they kind of bombed out in MDL playoffs this season. And then even further, that the next season of MDL is going to be a training season, so it will be at minimum 2 seasons before we see them have another crack at it. I think that's like a real kick in the guts for them. But as long as they keep on consistently being able to come through these close qualifiers in North America, and we keep on having opportunities to see them on land, I mean, yeah, it's very exciting to see what they'll be able to do in another 6 months.
I think an interesting thing was our interview with them. Maximilian did it from Jönköping actually. They were asked about Sonic and TC. They were asked about the difference between EU and NA, which is obviously an ongoing story or a battle, or however you want to put it. He said that we find the NA teams have a lot more different styles, but all these EU teams kind of play a similar style of CS. I think we can thank you for that, Hunden, by the way. Thank you. And then he says, every time we play EU teams, we come to NA and all these teams are kind of just rushing us, bursting us, and we're kind of like, what the fuck are they doing? Which is, I think this is the best description of NA Counter-Strike I've seen in a while. Apart from maybe the top 2 teams, as you said. It's always interesting to see those teams that go this way and then go back, and considering that they were from South Africa is kind of funny too, right? Where there isn't really a scene. But on the back of a run like this, what actually has to happen for a team that's not really top tier? Maybe this is for you, Hunden, to actually capitalize on that. Like, what do you do next if you have a showing like this and you get noticed and you have some momentum coming within the team? How do you build on that?
Yeah, it's too long time ago that I did results like that, but I think it's important to take a break now. The Christmas break might be up sooner or later, and they need to chill it off now, and they just need to feel the results they did in Jönköping, because it was really good for them, and I think it shows like if you stick together and work hard together, you can achieve a lot, even though you don't have the best players, and they don't have the best players in South Africa. So I'm really happy to see a team like that can make results like this, because that was really, really good for them, I guess.
It also speaks to the greatness of actually having events like this coming, because I think they went all the way from the actual open qualifier, right? And this has to be one of the first times that a team did this, and all the teams in the playoffs, I believe, were actually not invited, or does that not count ENCE? I don't remember, but
No, I think it was just that both teams who qualified went to the playoffs. That was the storyline.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
it. Okay, yeah. Which is kind of, it just speaks to why it actually makes sense to have these DreamHack Opens events, I guess. I mean, Existence Galaxy going through was pretty awesome, even though there was kind of a fallout from the interview we did with Baba. Did you guys see that? I think that just the title, I think Plopsky is better than Brawlan. And it wasn't even like false or clickbait or anything, even though we get accused of that every once in a while. It was actually what he said. Like, I think he's much better. So the result like that also pretty great. And then of course we have ENCE winning the whole thing. I won't go into the memes because it was kind of there was a lot of it on the actual broadcast, maybe actually a little too much. So this is the second win for them, at least in a couple of months, since they took Star Series, right? This team I think is kind of interesting. Where do you guys see them going further on?
Me and Martin actually did a bet today that ENCE will be a top 10 team in 2019.
So who's for and who's against?
Yeah,
I'm for.
Okay.
They will be it. I'm pretty sure they play so good, and I think they have so much firepower in this team. Ariel is really, really good. Sergi is really, really good. All of them can play up to a really, really high level. So, and it seems like they don't have any weaknesses in the map pool either. So, I think ENCE was by far the best team at this tournament, even though they lost the opening match. But shit happens in best of ones. In best of ones, I guess. So, I think they will be really, really good in 2019.
Do they play all maps or?
I don't think so. I'm not sure what they don't play.
Yeah, I would have to check actually. I remember checking it once and I forgot about it.
Just looking at the final, right? They manhandled Bravado, right? And obviously, you know, how much of that Bravado run was a Cinderella run, yada yada yada. That remains to be seen in the future. But at least in this event, Bravado were looking pretty decent, and just, you know, put a stop to that very quickly. So that speaks to how good ENCE are feeling right now.
Plus, they just have so much firepower, right? I mean, just a guy like Sergey, it's insane to watch him play. And then you watch these rounds, and you can think, okay, so this is what a 16-year-old is doing apparently now in CS in 2018. Just blowing my mind on a monthly basis, I guess.
Imagine if we let 14-year-olds play in, you know, the big leagues. You'd be seeing some wild stuff.
You think that's actually a viable option?
Well, why wouldn't it be?
It would be if the leagues allowed it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only barrier that you see.
No real reason to keep it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's very hard to find any arguments against it, really. Like, like, people bring up professionalism, and, like, obviously they're underage, so they have to have some sort of consent to even sign contracts and stuff like that. But as long as they have that, I just don't see a problem.
What do you think, Hun, about leading a 14-year-old?
No thanks.
Why not?
I think it's too young, and they need to understand the things about being a part of a team. Give space to everyone on the team. That is really important, and I don't think a guy who is 14 years old knows these things yet. They need 2 more years on the back before I will play with them, for sure.
All right. Just too big of a job, huh? I mean,
yeah.
If you had the proper organization around them, do you think it would still be a problem if you just had, you know, whatever resources it took from an organization to do it properly? I mean, imagine the payoff it would be for like a big org to have. I don't want to say the naughty word, but academy teams if that's ever sorted out, that could actually do this thing?
Yeah, I think it's possible for sure, but I'm not sure how much of a fan I am of the academy teams and stuff like that. North Academy, I think that was the only thing that worked out for anyone, because they had the money to have a really good team besides the normal North team. So I think you need a lot of money if you want to have a good academy team who can replace some of the players on the best team in the organization.
Ghost Academy as well, right? Wound up yielding Neptune, who's playing on the main team, and he's another young guy who kind of came up and then had to sit on the sidelines as a result of these age limits kind of coming in. So
didn't he lie about that? Actually, I think you guys wrote about that.
That's a whole other thing. Let's not get into that. He lied. He forgot. Who really knows? I mean, you forget how old you are all the time. I do. I'm old.
Not when you turn 30.
People forget things. But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised to hear you say that, Hunden, just because you know, someone with your knack for discovering talent, you know, Sergey himself, Frozen, Neptune, and there are more people who kind of really got done dirty by MDL kind of enforcing the 16-year-old limit, and, you know, all that happened is they went down a division and wasted, you know, 6 months of their lives. You know, we could have seen Sergey do this on a big stage, you know, even earlier if that hadn't happened. So yeah, I'm with Milan. I really see no benefit to it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm not sure if I agree with it, but the team also needs to work out, and if you have some older players on the team who is 26, 27, and you're going to play with a guy who is 14 years old, then you go to the boot camp, and then you might not have a lot of things to talk about and do besides playing together, and if that is working out, that is also fine for sure, but I think it's okay to be 16 before you can play the MDL and stuff like that, because when you are 14, you need to go out and play football at some point and not playing computer all day long.
That's the father in you speaking.
Spoken like a parent. I was just about to say that.
I mean, to be fair though, like most players who have improved enough to be on the top level have kind of started by just playing the game so much when they were about 14 or something like that, and then like 2 years later, after doing that for 2 years, basically playing 24/7, they actually got to some level and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that.
Maybe it also just kind of resolves itself over time. Like here, at least, this is the only experience I have. But in Denmark, we have so many schools getting into this thing, and you kind of have to figure that once this gets rolling as a regular program, and you churn through these kids, there's bound to be some of them who are actually mature enough to play it at a level where you have to kind of figure whether the age restrictions are just, you know, keeping them locked in, and keeping, you know, some great players from actually entering the scene. And I'm also kind of curious as to what, and obviously you guys can answer that, but what organizations think about this, like teams, like would you want, do you see any teams kind of taking big chances on that, or is that also brand wise, marketing wise, a little bit too much of a stretch to actually take on like a 14-year-old and put him in the spotlight and say, oh, this is our new guy? That would be my concern, actually, mostly. If a player like someone like Stown from Fractus, who obviously is actually doing pretty well, but also on TV, and if that actually works out long term for a player like that.
I mean, I only see upsides from the organization's perspective. I mean, if you can show that you're a mature organization that is able to kind of give a home to kind of these young players and kind of groom them for professional, life, and then, at minimum, that's great PR for you, right? And then everyone wants to read about, oh, you see this 13-year-old kid, wow, he's amazing. Who does he play for? Oh, these guys, wow, super cool. And then there's also the financial aspect, right? These players are never going to be cheaper than before when no one has heard of them, right? So yeah. You find your Frozen, you find your Staven, you find your Neptune, you give them a nice little cushy contract for 3 years, hopefully they develop into something, and if they do, you either have an amazing player already on your books, or you have people lining up to buy them off you, so it's a win-win.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe, it's also easy to end up in a situation where like you make this team and then you have to kind of watch it fall off. If you look at what's happening with Frexters right now, who we talked about, like they made those guys, right? Found them and then built them up and then had the whole thing around them, and now they have to kind of let them go because they don't want to play there anymore. There's also it's a big risk to take, in my opinion. Like you'd have to be pretty sure that you would somehow capitalize, like not give all your money to Agent HUNDEN, who would take too huge of a cut, or things just kind of amounting to nothing in the end because the players are going to leave you as soon as bigger organizations are there with bigger contracts, right? So anyway, now that we're on the business side of things already, let's talk a bit about one of the biggest pieces of news that came out since we last were on, which is that the European version of EPL is going to expand to. You see Joe getting ready now. He's got the sweater on. He's hydrated. You're warmed up about this. So what happened was that EPL Europe will be 16 teams, and as far as I can see, it won't mean more teams in the actual finals. It's a little bit vague still at this point because you saw ESL saying that they'll reveal the rest of it in Odense at the finals. So
well, they'll reveal at least to the players. We're not even sure if we're going to get that news ourselves. Yeah, we know the players will know.
I'm pretty excited to see what it is because, in my opinion, it all kind of depends on what will happen with the finals and the way that it's played out, because they said in the press release that this is because of viewers, or at least that it was both player and viewer demands. And I'm just thinking, so did you actually have viewers saying, oh, we want more online CS? But then there's also talks of there not being more matches. So I'm kind of anxious, and this is like a big disclaimer.
That's kind of confirmed, I feel like. It was ESL basically did confirm that there was going to be fewer online matches. So it just must be some sort of a system where either it's like groups, like maybe a couple of groups where it's going to be a little bit less, so obviously you don't have as many teams playing each other. But maybe it's going to amount to the same amount of matches, but at least they said the teams themselves won't play more than they did before. It's going to be some sort of a Swiss system, who knows? But it obviously will be fewer matches, and that's only a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, the numbers work out nicely if you look at them, right? You have 16 teams in EU and 12 teams in NA, so that splits nicely into 4-team GSL groups if they want to go that route. I have no idea if that is what they will do, but that certainly seems to be an option and a good reason for padding out the European division.
So anyway, what are you guys' feelings about it? Because to me, the move itself makes a lot of sense, you know, because there are so many good teams in EU, and you want some more of them actually getting into your league, and you want to see more of them in action. You can always discuss whether it's online that you want to see them, but at least that seems to be the idea, right? So, Joe, I know you were looking forward to talking about this. Like the move itself, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I even tweeted this. The move itself to expand Europe to have 2 more teams in there makes perfect sense. There are obviously easily 2 Pro League caliber teams that are sitting down in MDL kind of squandering away. Now, the issue that I have with the move is both the timing and kind of the method of how some of these periphery things have sorted out. They're announcing this move, 5 days before relegations and finals are set to be played in Dallas on another continent. They're using that as an excuse to say that, we don't have enough time to break these ties, from the quarterfinals of playoffs. So we're just going to kind of, move these guys along based on, round difference or whatever kind of tiebreaker they're using. I saw someone in my mentions said, I think it was actually Gomez from Renegades, the Renegades manager, who said that, surely the teams knew about this beforehand. How can that be the case? If that was the case, then you wouldn't see LDLC forfeiting matches in Chicago in MDL, which, as we now know, were precious matches to forfeit.
Because now they're in a tie that doesn't get resolved, right?
Exactly. In my mind, if they do this and they announce this and they say we're gonna play out the 5th to 8th tie and the next however many teams go to relegation, then fine, all well and good. But the fact that they announced this and very suspiciously, we're keeping 2 WISA teams in Pro League without having to make them go to Dallas. We also have Optic all of a sudden, bumped up a slot, getting a chance at Pro League. So, I don't want to put my tin hat on too much, but this all has worked out very conveniently for the WISA teams involved.
Yeah, I was about to say, especially when you look at which teams and which leagues are actually in the WESA, right? I mean, it's not to say that anything suspicious went on. It's just, why would you even want to put yourself in a situation where we can sit and talk about this, where we can actually, where someone would even speculate that you're kind of playing games with the spots in your league, and it just happens to be that the teams that you have connections to are actually stay in the league. I mean, I can understand expanding the league to have teams like NIP and Fnatic going in, or LDLC could have been a great team to have, but it's just the method of it just seems very weird.
I mean, I have to say that I kind of understand why ESL have done it now, just because if they did it during the previous season, obviously it would have made those last matches completely irrelevant. Like, people wouldn't even care about those last matches. So, and they couldn't tell teams like in the background, because those teams, that's the same thing. They wouldn't care about those last matches. They wouldn't care about trying not to be eliminated, and that would take away from the viewing experience, whatever it is. So I kind of understand that, and that Pro League finished, and quite soon afterwards you have the whole relegation process. So they have to do it in that gap, because there's just no other place where they can announce it. Obviously, it would have been better if it was announced at the start of a season, and like with those teams already, like making it through some other way. I don't know how, those extra 2 teams or whatever. It would have been better if it started out that way rather than like finish the league and then during the relegation process this gets announced. But I just feel like they didn't really have much of a choice timing wise.
Hun, what do you think about this? I mean, the action itself of expanding the EU part of it, but not NA, or at least doing it in general.
I think it's okay to do it like this, because in Europe it's way harder to play in Pro League. It's way harder to qualify for the Pro League. So I think it's okay to have more teams in Europe than NA. But the timing with it, and no one telling LDLC what will happen if they decide to forfeit these 2 games. I think the timing is really bad, and I'm not sure how they can fix that, because the timing is always hard to find the right timing, because if they did it back in the days, then Virtus.pro would have been invited again at some point. But they had to pick a time, and they did it here, and I think it's okay, even though it was really close to the relegation matches.
And there's also, you have to kind of think about a team like Epsilon, right, who were actually, I think, originally supposed to have the Optic spot, but then for some reason couldn't go to the MDL Global Challenge and play, I think it was. Like, if you're a team like that, you have to think, we got fucked here. Like, we got totally screwed over, right?
Yeah, but they decided to make lineup changes. They decided to kick 2 players, and yeah, the timing is really bad. So that's how it is, I guess. That's the game, and we never know what is happening tomorrow in Counter-Strike, what announcement they will do, and maybe they will update one map, remove a door or something like that. So we get surprised every day here in Counter-Strike, in my opinion.
You'll have chickens with Christmas hats on. That's all you'll get. That's my...
we're definitely getting that. Like, there's no question.
I saw some speculations that it would come this week, right? I mean, I think ESL even helped the speculations along by tweeting out that, we got this special beta build for the EPL Finals, so we avoid any update issues. And like, if you know the Counter-Strike fans, you don't say these things if you don't want to start something. It's my take on it.
Just to close this topic out, unless people have other thoughts. In my mind, in my view, knowing what we know about the situation, I think it is borderline unconscionable what ESL has done to these other 5 to 8 teams. I think if you're going to say that, we don't have time to do a tiebreaker or whatever, I think that is just unacceptable. If you can't, if timing doesn't work out, have them play at midnight or 3 a.m. or whatever. Fly them out to Dallas to play. it just seems very poorly executed. That's all.
That's all. So I mean, but what if we expand a little bit on this the consequences? I mean, obviously we need to have we need to wait till ESL Pro League Finals and see what's actually going to happen with the league and how they're going to change the way it's played out. But this is obviously, I mean, a move in the grand scheme of things, talking about online CS in general, where it's a season where, and we talked about this also, but I also saw it a lot on social media, everywhere else, just people seem kind of just wary of it, like just kind of tired of online CS. And like, do you think, I mean, depending on the changes that they're going to make to the format, that this could be something that actually make people want to watch this again, or at least what would it take to like reinvigorate this? That's because obviously we talked about that one move was also available, and that is to actually close down your league or wait till teams pick one or the other. I mean, do you think this is kind of a move to get a competitive edge?
Yeah, of course, but I still think they need to do something with the Facebook stream. I think it takes a lot of the viewers, and we need to see it on Twitch as well, because if you open both streams, then you can see the Russian stream is in front of the Facebook stream as well, and the quality is way better. So I think if they decide to stream it on Twitch again, then they might get more viewers again.
You think that's really it? I mean,
that's definitely part of it. I have to agree. Like a lot of people have just stopped following Pro League because it's on Facebook, because it's not a very competitive streaming platform, not especially just compared to Twitch or YouTube.
It sucks.
It doesn't even matter. YouTube is pretty good as well. Like those two are just so far ahead of Facebook that I would completely understand if they lost a lot of viewers just because of the platform. So that's definitely a part of it. But just generally the league itself, the way that it has been so far, like obviously the individual games don't really mean anything. Like you don't have any incentive to watch the match, because you don't really see any that it has any value, that it actually has any impact on the overall league, because it's 1 out of 24, 28, 26 in Europe, 1 out of 26 matches that they play, and obviously that means nothing until you get to like the last maybe a round or two, where it starts mattering, where you start seeing how these games could impact their placement and whether they get to the finals or whether they get relegated or whatever like that. So that's the second problem, I feel like. So maybe ESL are just going to try to do it in some sort of a format where the matches actually do have impact, which would be what we were talking about before, either GSL groups or Swiss format, just a normal format that you kind of see in LAN tournaments.
Do you really think that actually makes a difference? I mean, in a scene where we have like so many proper LAN events every weekend, do you really feel like a format change is what it takes to reinvigorate something that obviously not many people, I mean, care to watch, just because you have good LAN CS if you just wait a few days?
I mean, maybe if you pair the format change with a venue change, right? If people take issue with online CS, take the CS offline. I mean, that would be probably the biggest thing that ESL could do, is say that, okay, we're going to pull an E-League now, and we're going to play the season out over 5 weeks. You have a group per week, and do it that way. That would honestly be what I'm expecting, and we'll see what happens.
But then again, group stage is like, I think it's also boring to have, because then you can be lucky to get a really, really good group with 2 of the worst teams in Pro League, and then Astralis will end up winning the group so easy, and then they will just move on. But I don't know how they can do it, but I'm not sure if group stage is the right way to do it, in my opinion.
So
there's not really much else you can do, though.
Yeah, that's true, but I'm not sure how they should do it, because most of the games is so boring until they end up with the placement matches, where they might go to the relegation, or they might be knocked out or something like that. So I don't know how they can do it.
All right.
Put everyone in a giant CPL style double elimination bracket like the old days. Call it a day.
EU5s all the way. There's more CS, right? Let's move on actually to some more viewer questions. Also, chat, if you have any questions for any of us or all of us at the same time, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll pick them up as we go along. There's a lot of them on Twitter, but we kind of we're definitely open to more of them. Actually, Dr. Doom just posted a question that kind of fits into this that we could start with. Do you all foresee there only being one online league in the future and Valve stepping in to semi-control the schedule of majors and player breaks? So this is a much bigger question.
The second part, I mean, we already have that stepping into to control the schedule of majors. That's already what they kind of do. And the player break, because the player break is obviously down to the players and the players union and whatever that's been established a couple of years ago. And now Valve have actually kind of messed with it because they put the major after it. But the second part we already see happening. The first part about there being only one online league, the problem is competition, right? Like neither of those leagues will want to give up that significant portion of time in the CS schedule, whether it's online or not. It's just, I'm sure it's quite a big part of their program. So neither of them will definitely not want to just give up the spot to, like ECS won't want to give up the spot to ESL, because that just gives all the power to ESL and vice versa when it comes to those leagues, because they are the biggest. Obviously, those two are the only leagues that have the elite teams. So that's the problem that I have with it. Like, it's not going to happen from the organizer's perspective. It could only happen from the player's perspective, and that could be down to the organizers kind of like bumping up prize pool heavily and trying to invest into it so that they can. The players have an incentive to prefer one league to the other, and that's pretty much the only way that I could see it happening.
Then we have SilverX Jacob, who wants to talk about something we actually were kind of in the middle of talking about when the stream went live, and that's Uptick. Really poor showing again, and obviously I think you're correct in that. The Dream Winter showing wasn't really good. Should they add refresh, do you think, or are there changes? And we're actually talking about this a lot, especially you had some thoughts about that, Hun. This Uptick thing, I mean, we talked about them, I think, a couple of times on this stream, and it just seems to keep on being kind of this disappointing story where we think, yeah, they should be better, yeah, they're not as good as we want them to be, and this lineup should do a lot more, and they have such great players. And what are your thoughts on like what you've seen? Because it's been since May that they were a team now, at least before Nico came. What do you think about it?
I think they got a lot of issues right now. Yugi is not hitting his shots after he came back from the 3-month break he had at some point in Heroic. I think that is one of the biggest issues, because if your MVP player is not hitting his shots, then you might play without your star player on the team, in my opinion. And then again, I think they got some map pool issues. I also wrote that on Twitter, and it seems like they don't trust their own map pool, even though they practice a lot. So every time I watch them, I get a bit disappointed, because it seems like they never learn how to improve their map pool right now.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Lars. Do you think maybe, because we saw this with TSM right back in the day with Kerrigan, right, where kind of they seemingly had no faith in kind of their maps and kind of what they were supposed to be by the book good on? Do you think maybe this points to a lack of faith in Snappy as an in-game leader, or am I digging too deep?
I'm not sure about that. I think they got the trust in Snappy still, but every time they lose a match they should have won. If they lose that on the T side, they might lose a little bit of faith in Snappy, but from my point of view, Snappy is a pretty good in-game leader, and he's doing his job. He's killing a lot. He's one of the in-game leaders who is fragging a lot. So I'm not sure why their playstyle is not working out right now. Maybe they have too many opinions about how to play the game, because Cajun got his opinion, Config as well, and Snappy as well, and maybe Yugi and Nico also got a way they want to play the game. And if they're not on the same page in the strat book, then they might play really, really bad together, right?
What about the refresh thing? Obviously, he's tweeting right now that he's open for offers, just like he was before, just not with the team. Do you think he could be like a valuable asset to them?
Yeah, I think so. I think Nico have been disappointing a little bit since he joined the team. But overall, I think Nico is one of the support players they need on this team to make it work out. So I'm not sure if they will do better with Refresh, because I don't think Refresh got the supportive opportunities in his playstyle. So I don't think Nico for Refresh will work out at any point, in my opinion.
Oh shit! What's going on, guys? Who's making noises? I think it's Milan. Milan's trying to say something. I can see that it's not working for you. We can see you're talking, Striker, but we can't hear you. Someone plucked out his thing. Let's wait for him to see. Yeah, there are a lot of comments about this. Axie says Optic just continues disappointment. It's impressive, to be honest. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe if you want to kind of say something about that, Nikolai? Do you, because some of these players were your players once, like Config and Yugi. Do you still talk to them, and do you have any sort of insight as to how they feel about what actually happens in this team, considering that they are kind of looking not as they should?
It seems like every time they lose, all of them starts to grind even more. They start to play even more hours to make them improve. I think the biggest improvement is Kadrian. I also played with him back in the days, way back, 2011, 12, whatever. And he is working so hard to improve his own game. He's getting older and older. He don't have the same aim anymore, but he's so smart and he's working so hard, and he puts the hours into the game right now. And it also shows off at the stats and how they win. When they win, he's pretty much the star player of the team, and they need the rest of the players to step up. But I don't talk much to any of these players right now, because it seems like they are on their own team speak right now to try to find the solution to be good again.
All right.
Hello.
Hey, Striker, you're back.
I don't know. My receiver broke, I think, for a second.
Did you spill beer in your thing?
No. I wanted to ask Hunden what he thinks about Nico's, how he has kind of progressed from his time in Heroic, where it felt like he was one of the stars alongside with Yugi. At that point, where they had Asatag, Yugi, Nico, Snappy, and Madi on that lineup. So do you feel like ever since he's kind of switched first to North and then now to Optic, has his role really changed? Does he just not feel comfortable? What do you think about that?
Nico is a different person from pretty much every other young player I have played with. If you need something on the team, like you need someone to play B on Dust 2, then Nico will pick it. Like, I can take it, and he will always take the position where they need a player. So he's just filling in, and he will do his best job to find a way to play all those positions. So I think he's one of the keys on this team. They improved a little bit after Gade went out and they picked up Nico, in my opinion. But overall, I think Nico can be one of the keys on this team if they want to get into the top 10 in the world.
Okay.
All right. A lot of people actually in the chat wanted to, and also on Twitter when we announced that we're taking topics, is a player called BlameF. I don't know if you guys know, he plays for Epsilon, who obviously is putting up some pretty huge numbers, at least in some of the online matches that they have. Any of you guys taking a look at that guy? And Spano, I think I saw you nodding there. Is that someone you've had your eye on?
Yeah, of course. You need to look on a guy if he got 140 rating or something like that. He's just owning everyone right now, and it seems like he got a good understanding for the game. He knows how to play the game. In Danish CS, people is calling him baiting, and he's baiting a lot, and he's not going first into the sides. But they need to watch his demos, because he's playing really, really well, in my opinion, and he's by far one of the best CT players I have seen in the tier 2, tier 3 scene right now. So not so good on T, but way better on the CT side, in my opinion. And what I know right now is like he's going to be the in-game leader for the new Epsilon lineup. So that's really, really crazy, in my opinion.
Okay.
Oh, really?
What I'm curious about, and I think a lot of people are curious about, is if you have any insight into kind of his background, because he hasn't really followed the path of your prototypical Danish player, right? He kind of has found his way outside of Denmark, which is odd considering how strong a scene that you guys have. So just wondering if you kind of know any inside Counter-Strike information on that.
I can try. I'm not sure if I'm 100% correct, but he played 1.6. He's coming from the 1.6 scene, and a lot of players was calling him cheater and stuff like that. I'm not sure if that is true. You can search on YouTube on that one. I will not comment on it. And then he started to playing CSGO, where he was just playing with the same four mates on Faceit, and they were grinding together, and they were just playing a lot, and became top 5, top 10 in Denmark on Faceit. That's not any kind of achievement, but after in 2018, I think Great Danes decided to pick up Blamef, and then he decided to show off these numbers at Copenhagen Games. He was number 1 all the time, and everyone was surprised. So it's a new way, and I like to see more of him in 2019 as well.
Definitely. So something I think we need to touch on, because it's been mentioned a lot of times, and it's actually a pretty bit of a hit on us on HLTV. I don't know if you guys saw that just before we went on the show. It seems like there's a certain coach for a certain Danish team that's not really satisfied with the ranking system that we use. People have noticed that Peacemaker went on Twitter to say that he's kind of mad at the algorithm that we use. In 1 month, he says we won a tournament and went to the semis at DH winner, beating 2 teams ahead of us in the rankings. The outcome, we moved back a spot because they took out DH Stockholm points, which means DreamHack Stockholm no longer figures because of the delay that HLTV org built into the ranking system. Some TOs should reconsider their method to invite teams. And then he goes on to say that there's a lot of good people working at HLTV.org. Thank you, Lewis. But in my opinion, your ranking is total bullshit, and this point should be reviewed. So I guess it's a 2-prong attack here. It's both our rankings and then the way that TOs look at our rankings. I don't know if we should be defending ourselves right here.
I mean, it's not. First of all, it's not really up to us because we're not the ones who created the system. But it feels like Nomad is doing a pretty good job of replying, from what I can see. It just like keeps going on. I mean, it just happens every now and again that some teams will just not be. It doesn't seem logical to them, but like especially in this case, I feel like they just have to compare their results to the teams that are above them, and kind of have a second thought if they should actually be above them, if those of the results they have over the past whatever couple of months that they are actually better than the teams above them, and then they can start thinking about it more. Because just looking at your results, the way that Luis did in that, like based on that tweet where he was talking about the 2 results that they had, like that's not going to tell you anything if you don't know what the other teams have been up to. So that's the biggest problem that usually I see players not really understanding.
Yeah, I mean, this is we don't even have to make this about Peacemaker, right? We see these kind of complaints very, very frequently. And people are always looking at, oh, we did better than X, Y, and Z in this tournament, but there's a larger window than that. So yeah, maybe you beat one team, and if the points are close enough, then you hop over them. But that is not a given, and it should not be taken as gospel that will happen, especially when you're talking about when you get to the top 15, the top 10, and the gap between how many points get you moved up continues to grow. It looks like this. It's an exponential kind of increase. Astralis have 1,000, and the bottom team on that top 30 probably have 50, probably not even 100, right? So you can see kind of how steep the curve is, and there just seem to be a lot of people who are unhappy with that, and by all means, I invite them to come up with another ranking system, but right now this is what we have. And yeah, I do agree that maybe TOs should kind of look into it and maybe not blindly issue their invites based on what we have, but we have no control over that. So take that part of the complaint up with them.
So I want to ask you, Hun, about this, because obviously you've been on teams that have been on different spots in the rankings, and obviously can see it from the other perspective. Just having this ranking system and all in all, having to look at that as a player and kind of figure out whether you think it's fair or not. What's it like to fluctuate like that and have it just be constant in your career that you can't really get out of?
Yeah, I think the ranking system is okay. I think it's fine how it is right now. Even though it's hard to get into the top 30. I think it's a good system, and I think it's based on the right things with all the teams. But I think the most things he's complaining about is like how the tournament organizers is going to invite teams later on, and that might be the issue because, as he also said, it's like Heroic won 2 tournaments lately, but he's also whining about things like he wasn't even a part of the team when they did it good at DreamHack Stockholm. So I don't know. The system is good, and I think.
But it's got to feel like a little bit frustrating sometimes. I guess.
Yeah, of course. When you don't get the points for like, oh, you had a really good week here. I won against 10 teams above me, and I only got 1 point. What the fuck? That's a rough one. And I totally agree with him about that one. But you need to see it from the others' perspective as well, because it's a system who is going around the whole scene and all the tournaments, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many tournaments that it's just impossible to keep track of everything. So that's part of the issue. I feel like people just take it from their own perspective and how they've done, rather than looking at the whole thing. And that's obviously, it's complicated to kind of understand everything that goes into it. I can understand that. So that's fair enough. But that's really the problem. Like a lot of the players don't really understand how the system works, and then they complain about something even though it doesn't even make sense what they're saying.
Yeah. Is there any component that you think it is missing from the ranking right now? Anything that comes to mind?
Not really. Not really, to be honest.
All right. Thankfully, we have other guys looking exactly at how it's supposed to be set, right? There was also a guy with the greatest nick on Twitch. Coco is a stripper name. It's his actual name. Which team could use a player like Adren except for Na'Vi? Would he be willing to play a support role, or is he designated star in your opinion? That's obviously coming off the back of the fact that Gambit, I think, announced 2 days ago, was it? That Adren has also been, and I say also, released from the team. What do you guys see him going?
Yeah, except for Na'Vi, that's the problem, right? Hellraisers have just changed somebody, and that's obviously bringing in Hobbit for Bondic, so that's not going to happen as well. That would have been probably my first choice if it wasn't for Hobbit joining them. Na'Vi, it's not going to happen for obvious reasons. They've been doing well enough that they have no reason to change anybody.
I think also Hobbit actually said that they wouldn't, because he was obviously also. I mean, Hobbit in an interview said that he was quite sure that they wouldn't. He's obviously been looking into that as well.
Oh, about Na'Vi, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. But like outside of those 2 teams, that's the problem. Like, you don't really have that many other options for him, at least inside of the CIS region. Like, obviously, Hellraisers are not even that too much, but it's still like a CIS-based team because of Angel. So that's a part of it. But I think he'll have a hard time finding a team that he's going to be satisfied with, because it's not going to be a team that attacks on the top 10 at this point, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna have to be if I'm honestly not sure what there is in the CIS for him right now. If there really is a clear-cut team that he could go to right now, so I'm kind of left thinking that he has to go to one of these kind of mini budget phases, right? Like, do we think that like a Valiance, or depending on what like Epsilon is doing. I mean, the thing is that both those teams are a far kind of cry from where he's coming from. So how willing is he going to do that, or is he just going to buy his time?
That's what I was talking about. Like, that's the problem. Like, he doesn't really have the mix options, like the European mixes. First of all, that's a completely new environment for him. That's also another thing. But I'm sure he'd be able to adapt to that. That's just a matter of time, really, for anybody to get used to calling in English and things like that. We see Hobbit kind of going up against that now. But in terms of CIS, I mean, you could look at Vanguard just because of he's going to be familiar with a lot of those players. He actually played with Fitch for a while, obviously. So if there's potentially a spot, he could be joining them, just like this experienced player to help them take over that next step or something like that. But like, that's like you said, from his perspective, that's going to be a step down. So I'm not entirely sure. I think he's going to have to do that, though. He's going to have to go for this, like either like a borderline top 30 team or potentially a Vanguard, who are now 21st, which is not that bad. Like that's a couple of good results, and they're going to get some invites to tournaments and stuff.
Maybe like a Wind Strike or a Spirit, but I don't know. I don't.
Yeah,
That would be
seem
so
like
weird.
good options.
But if he can talk English on a good level, then Big is
He's
also
okay.
an opportunity. Yeah, then Big is also an opportunity.
Why would you say that?
Because I think they could use a player like him, and it seems like, at least at the Malta tournament, it seems like the team was a bit out of energy in most of the games, especially in the group stage. They lose to Tyloo and stuff like that. So I think Big is one of the opportunities he could go to.
So who would he replace?
That's the question.
Who knows?
Let it be open for that one. I think I don't know. They could replace Smuya because Tapson is playing the MVP as well, and Adrian could come in and bring some of his experience with him, and maybe try to make a new playstyle on that big team together with GG.Bet.
Do you really want to take Tabson off the rifle full time though? That's the question.
Yeah, that's the question. I don't know. I think it would be a good match for them, especially if he can go to the house and they can have a better communication together about how they want to play the game. And I think Big will be a good team for him, because Adrian, in my opinion, is one of the best players in the CIS region.
No doubt.
He was one of those kind of like entry fragger types that just have a very good feeling for when to go aggressive, when not to, like about kind of pushing back and forth in that aggression. That's his biggest strength, I think. His understanding of where the players on the opposite team are positioned, and the angles that he can take. So I'm not in. Well, I guess so. I guess Big could actually use somebody like that to have Tapson be like more of like a, I don't want to say a secondary, but just be able to work behind the Dren and kind of be that secondary guy coming in, and that could work differently. Even you can see Liquid that they're not really having a super dedicated helper, so Tapson could just be like a secondary one in that sense as well.
Then there was also another player that people really want to see us talk about, heroes talk about, is actually Swag in MIBR. That's one of the weirdest stand-ins I've seen in quite a while, especially since so what's gonna happen is he's gonna play for them in Lisbon, right, for the Blast Pro event. Since we knew that Bolts was on the team until like a day or two before they actually announced that Swag would be playing for them. Yeah. But that's something that people have been asking about in the chat. I mean, so obviously I guess they could start with you, Joe, right? How do you think about Brax or Swag playing in a team like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure why people are so keen to hear what we think about this. It's pretty much, it's like a non-thing. Like
it's just a standard situation, right?
Yeah, they're going to an event. They need a fifth. The only thing that I question about this is Swag has, MDL finals coming up, right? And then if Swole Patrol, somehow choke that, then they have relegation to play, and they have the rest of the global challenge, and then right following that is going to be Lisbon. So what I question this move from both perspectives. Is Swag putting in time with MIBR ahead of Lisbon? If so, how much is that affecting his preparation with Swole Patrol? Is he not putting in any time with MIBR until all of the global challenge stuff has concluded? And then how much are MIBR really benefiting from taking Swag? So, I mean, I think it is a strange move, but I would not be reading into it very much if I was anyone out there.
There was, if nothing else, there were a lot of great memes about it, right? Like, I saw one guy saying, they did say made in Brazil, not stayed in Brazil. I thought it was pretty good. There were a lot of those. Imagine showing someone in 2015-16 this, and then there's a list of the stuff actually going on. Like Cloud9 is a European team. Made in Brazil is an American team. Like sometimes the simulation just goes wild, right? But obviously, as you said, this is just a one-off. I'm excited to see it though. I mean, for everything that's kind of weird about the move, I think it's pretty great that we get to see him play at this level. Because when you look at the opposition there, it's like some of the best teams in the world, right? And obviously, a lot of us feel that he should actually have the chance to do that on a regular basis, but has a hard time doing it just because of his predicament, right?
We've also my mic stopped working again for some reason.
Yeah, I saw.
Anyway, what I wanted to say was that we've seen MIBR do this before with Fox, where they just brought him in, and I don't remember what tournament that was at the time, but I just remember that he didn't really practice with the team ahead of time, and only practiced like for the second tournament. I think the first one was ECS, and then it was the major or something like that. And for the first tournament, they didn't even practice with him. They just went in with just trying to figure it out on the fly. So it's nothing new from MIBR. You also have to think that basically that's their last event of the year, and you have to think about how much they actually care about it. Like they've obviously committed to it. They've been invited. They've accepted it. They probably didn't know that ahead of time that they were not going to have a fifth player. Or didn't know that they wouldn't be able to find anybody else. So you have to take all of that into consideration and how that plays into their chances at the tournament.
So let's end this segment up with one more question. And I think what we kind of forgot, or what I kind of forgot, was that actually we kind of promised someone a poster. It's something we do every week. The best question.
I thought we already went through that question.
Yeah, actually no, because I think it needs to be confirmed, unconfirmed before we can actually say that this guy won. It's actually a repeat from last week that I choose. Let's pick this one. It's from Brian CS, and I have no idea who this guy is. It wouldn't surprise me if he's also Danhachi Goon, like all the rest of the winners we've had. Yeah, this is a kind of strange. Do you guys hear the noise? Is that just me? Yeah, do you guys have like a...
I think that's just you.
Howling tone, that's good. I thought it was you again.
Nope.
So the question here is, people will often argue about who the best player is, Simple versus Device, Nico versus Cold, last year, etc. These players can usually be classified as either passive, like Coldzera, or aggressive, like Simple. Which style is more impactful, and can their respective impact be fully explained by stats? What do you guys think of that one?
I mean, it obviously can. Otherwise, like those, one of those types would never be like among the top players in the world, or just even have that discussion between Nico and Cold. Like obviously, it is reflected in stats because that's largely what we base the ranking on, or and MVPs and things like that. So it is obviously can be reflected, as if like aggressive players tend to have more impact because they just have a better chance to get multi-kills and stuff like that, but they also get a better chance to die. So it's a tough one for me, honestly.
Anyone else want to chime in?
I think if like Simple, you're going for being aggressive, and then you're going to make a lot of highlights and stuff like that. And people will look into that, like he will be the MVP of this tournament because he did this specific round. Like you don't see Device doing so many aggressive peaks, and of course he's still being the MVP of most of the tournaments Astralis is winning, but we don't see these highlights we need to see from like we do from Simple. That's my opinion of it. So Simple is more the man of HLTV, and Device is the man of Astralis winning the trophies, I guess.
Would you kind of classify Device as kind of falling like right in the spectrum between those two players then? Like not really passive or aggressive, kind of just more of a neutral, reactive kind of a player? Or would you define him somehow else?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say what he is. I think we could create the own one for him, because I think he's the smartest MVP player in the world. He never do anything stupid. He never do anything... He's not over-peaking, but he's still going for the aggressive peaks if he got his teammates with him, so they can help him back afterwards.
All right. Speaking of Astralis and also Cold and the rest of the people who are sort of in that top 3-4 talk, let's move on to Odense and the Pro League Finals, which is I mean, if you look away from Lisbon, is going to be like the last big event, especially since Liquid are going to be there, they are not in Lisbon, and also just the format differences and the way to determine who's really the best team through a long period of time. It starts tomorrow, and it actually opens up with Astralis for playing Vichy. And if you go look at the odds for that game, by the way, it's kind of funny. Please go do that.
Very, very, very low.
I think Astralis have like 1.08 to win that one, right? Yeah. But just like, I mean, obviously, every time we talk about this, it's Astralis over and over again. And I know, Hunden, you already kind of killed it for us by saying that they would win again. But who else do you think looks strong going into the EPL finals that aren't Astralis?
I actually think that Made in Brazil is on the right way to make some good results. It seems like their playstyle is getting more and more used for all of them. They might still do some mistakes, and that might be because they have to talk English. But I think Made in Brazil got a good chance to make it to the semi or something like that, in my opinion.
I mean, semi seems very reasonable, just because. Like, if you look at the other teams, like, you obviously have Astralis, Navi, and Liquid as kind of like the main teams there. But we saw Navi kind of fall to the last time in Chicago, and then obviously Liquid at ECS, that was the same thing. So they definitely have a chance to go far again. You like, outside of those teams, I mean, we always have to look at Mousesports as kind of this dark horse, and them being able to potentially make it far. But I think with them, Sticko kind of hit the nail on the head. They have problems, especially with form. A lot of their players, basically none of their players are anywhere near their peak form. So that's a big problem for Mousesports and their chances at EPL, unless that changes, unless Sunny kind of goes back to what he know him to be. But yeah, I feel like those four teams that I mentioned at the start, Astralis, Navi, MIBR, and Liquid, are looking like the best teams at the tournament, and that's pretty obvious, I feel like.
You still have to kind of wonder whether Liquid are going into this with the right way. I remember in our interview with Naf, he said that not that it was his choice to make whether they attend events or not, but he seemed to kind of get the impression that he thinks that they play a lot of events and maybe should do the same thing, or at least that's a possibility that they do the same thing as Astralis are doing. I'm kind of questioning whether they've really set up to go all the way in this, that they really have the lowdown on Astralis, who've been laying off, or at least staying back a little bit and kind of picking and choosing their events with more carefully. I'm anxious to see whether if these two teams end up in a final again, I just don't see anything
nothing's going to change there.
Yeah, and this while it's still the most, I guess, likely final that we have, maybe if you look away from Navi. So I mean, actually going into this one, I kind of feel that fatigue of these two teams going up against each other again. I kind of hope it's going to be something else, but I also think that Liquid might not actually be able to do it this time, go all the way. I mean, I think they've done too much, and they might actually not even go through groups.
Liquid?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't see why they wouldn't, honestly. If you look at the teams that they have in their group, like outside of Astralis, right? Like they're on the other side of the bracket of that group, so as long as they get to that final of the group, they're through to the playoffs already. And look at the teams they have in front of them. They have G2, and on the other side, the second match that they have to win is INTZ and Big. Do you really see any of those three teams beating Liquid?
Big
even a Liquid, Big have like a reasonable chance, I guess, but I don't see that happening, honestly. So like those two teams are definitely set for the playoffs. And even when you look at the other side, like I feel like those 5 teams that we've mentioned are so far ahead of everybody else that I just think those teams are almost set to go to the playoffs, all of them.
It'll kind of just be a repeat of like the most of the events that we've seen. I mean, you guys think that Navi can maybe take the whole thing?
Yeah, I think they're going to challenge Astralis at this tournament. It seems like every time Astralis and North is playing in Denmark, they start to feel the pressure too much, and that might also be the reason why Astralis is not winning in Denmark, because they start to feel the pressure. So, and Navi would love to beat Astralis in Denmark again, like they did at the Blast series. So, yeah, and so I think Navi is one of the favorites here, and I think they also bootcamp for this tournament. And every time they do that, they show up with a really, really high level of Counter-Strike.
Yeah, that's going to be curious if they actually come back from what they showed in Chicago, because they kind of went right after Copenhagen, so that might have been the problem, that they just weren't fully recovered from like all the travel and everything, because they literally just played the tournament.
I still don't think that's really enough of an explanation for, like, they lost to E United, right? And then big 2-0 without really putting up that much of a fight.
Yeah.
I mean
they've played close matches with Big before, and this time was actually, those were both close maps as far as I remember. I think it was like 16-14 and 12 or something. Actually 16-13, 16-14. So, like, sure, it was Big's first time beating Navi in a best of 3, so that's obviously means that there was something wrong with Navi. And United, you kind of hit that as well. That one was really weird for me. Like, I have no idea what happened there. Like, I even remember watching the match, and even then I just didn't quite understand what was happening to Navi. It seemed like the roles were completely reversed. So I don't know, maybe it just looked like a very off match for Navi, and that might have been due to them literally just coming off an event. Like, that has some sort of an effect on quite a lot of teams. So I'm just willing to kind of disregard Chicago and just see Navi as back where they were at Blast, and like Hunden said, that's where they were favored. So I agree with that. I think Navi could definitely challenge Astralis, based on what we've said here before with Astralis. I guess feeling some kind of a mental pressure because of their home crowd or whatever it is.
Yo, I want to ask you a little bit about some of the NA teams that are coming into this. Also, I mean, obviously, an interesting team there is Ghost, with Stida and the guys coming in of a pretty great year, I think, even though they haven't. I mean, they made some upsets but didn't win anything. What do you feel like, Joe, for Ghost, and do you think they can make an impact?
I mean, I hope so. I mean, Wardell is showing no sign of slowing, and that's all well and good. And this is really Ghost's last chance this year to make a big splash, right? Because even though they're participating in the Katowice close qualifier, they won't be able to use Steel there. So, I mean, they're obviously not going to be firing on all cylinders there. So I would expect that they've put in a lot of work looking towards this event. So I think they have a decent chance of getting a couple wins. We'll see.
They have a pretty tough start, or I'll say they have Mouse Sports in the opener, and then either Order or Navi.
Honestly, their group is fairly tough. Like, they obviously have Navi, Mouse Sports first, but then they also have Energy and North, who will fall down to the lower bracket off the bat, which is kind of like a team. I'm not going to say it on the same level. Ghost are a little bit below, but that's the problem, right? They have quite a lot of teams that they are at least on a similar level with, so it's going to be a tough run. But they definitely have a chance to take down one of those teams. It's probably not going to be either Mouse Sports and Navi, though, or even a MIBR, I feel like. So seeing them go through the playoffs, it would have to take a really big upset.
Yeah, but the main thing about Ghost is, like, every time they go to a tournament, they seems to be so prepared for every opponent they're going to play against. And a best of one against Mouse Sports should be possible for them, in my opinion, because the preparation they do, it looks like they win every game because of the preparation, and they do some new strats and people get surprised, and what are we going to do now? Okay, we lost the best of one. Now we have a chance to already qualify for the playoffs.
Yeah.
And you also have to wonder what kind of preparation Mouse Sports are going to bring to it, right? I mean, definitely, maybe I'd say the weakest of the top 5 teams that we have, or they are top 5, right?
Tops what they fall, and
they fell
in the ranking, but
that's true. That's true. So yeah, I mean, wouldn't count it out, but still, I mean, the run, the bracket for them is just so hard, right? And And then I don't. Should we? Do you guys want to talk about Astralis coming into it, or do we just move on?
What do you mean?
No, I just mean like, do you guys see any reason for them not to repeat like the 2 wins they had this November, or I mean, because some people were kind of saying that there were signs of weakness, that they started off slowly at some of the events.
I mean, it has happened a couple of times, but like, I don't see them starting slowly here because they have Vici and then either Renegades or Razors. Like, I don't see either of those teams coming close to beating even like a 70% Astralis. Like, I don't see that happening at all. And even if they lose like to, say, Liquid, who are on the other side in that winners match, which determines the semifinalists, even then they're already in the playoffs, and we know Astralis in the playoffs. So it's hard to not see Astralis as a massive favorite once again. But we've mentioned it here before with the psychological thing that they had, which was kind of obvious in Copenhagen. I felt like it was definitely not the Astralis that we have seen after that or even before it. So that's the only thing that I could see standing in their way.
I'm interested to see if any teams are going to be picking Nuke against Astralis.
I think I'm only pissed that they're on the other side with Mouse Sports. They could probably potentially meet somewhere in like quarterfinals or something, and I kind of hope that happens, just because we've seen Mouse Sports get so close a couple of times already in November, actually, at ECS, and before that at was it Chicago? I don't remember. I think it was Chicago.
Texas ECS, I guess.
Oh yeah, ECS, yeah, but the previous one, because they had another 16-13 where they actually had a 13-1 lead.
It was ECS in Chicago. I'm actually looking at your own article right now.
It was ECS in Chicago. So that would be, I think Mouseboards are probably the only team that could beat Astralis on Nuke at this point, just because they seem to have figured out something at least. While everybody else, just even Liquid, who started out kind of at least taking them to close results, and now have just like dipped to like below double digits. They don't even seem to have a chance in those matches anymore on Nuke. So that's like the only team that I could see them actually challenging Astralis.
There's a potential for like a really great double deny here. If any team, let's say the playoffs, win versus them on Nuke, and then also deny them the chance for the Grand Slam title, right? Yeah. There's got to be someone out there really hungry to actually make that. I don't know if picking Nuke then would be the best, would be your best bet, but someone's got to sit out. I mean, this has to be the event where the other teams in the top are most hungry to beat them, right? And I'm wondering if that has any effect on the way that they enter it, like because they know it's going to be Astralis, like Navi, MIBR, Mouse Sports. They all know that it's going to be them that they're going to be facing at some point to get there, right?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, denying a successful team like that $1 million, I think would be pretty sweet. Probably even better than, and this is, that's a beautiful word down in Germany, right? Schadenfreude. So I think the value of that would be immense. Anyway, speaking of winning a lot of money, guys, that's not what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. You mean the thing that we haven't done?
We haven't done. Before we get on with this, please, guys, everyone, put the questions that you might still have for us in the chat, because we're going to be coming back in a little while to answer your closing questions. But for now, let's go into the thing I've been kind of dreading for this one, because and
I believe, man, I think this is the one.
This
is the one that we make it.
Every week we do a betting game. We go to GG.Bet to look at all the nice, funny, and weird odds that we can find for the upcoming games. Please remember to bet responsibly, by the way, because we don't, obviously. And then we started out with €1,000 from the beginning of the show's second season. And now some of it has less. And usually at this point, I put up like a graph that shows our movements. I'm not going to be doing that this time, because we've all been losing money since I think episode 7 or 8. So let's just get into the action, right? And
what's the episode now?
14.
14. Oh.
Just so, since Prof isn't here and Professor usually bets with us, we've handed over the keys to his treasure chest to you, Joe, which I'm going to be excited to see that. So let's see you start off with your bets for this week.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm playing with house money, so
Yeah.
not a lot of risk here. I didn't want to do my buddy Zvonimir dirty here, but I have Liquid taking a win versus G2, which I don't think that will shock anyone. Liquid coming off a win, G2 are a perennial dumpster fire in the last year. I took Ghost over Mouse Sports just because I was feeling cheeky. I have faith in my boy Josh Hassan. Hunden talked about that a little bit. Astralis over Vici is a no-brainer, even with the low odds. Sometimes this is like putting your money in a savings account. Like I'm gonna get 8% interest. That's pretty good. That's not terrible.
Yeah. I mean, compared to the other ones, for sure. Like you're balancing out the Ghost one with that one, so I can see why.
That's literally the worst way to bet.
and then rounding it out, I took Renegades over Hellraisers. I don't think Hellraisers have had enough time to really work on things with my boy Hobbit. Renegades looked good before their turn at Chicago without Kassad, where they kind of looked a little bit rough, but they've had some time to shore that up, and hopefully they'll be looking a lot better here.
So what's the total odds on that, Joe? Do you remember?
It was a combo for only like 11.24. It really wasn't anything crazy. It was nothing compared to what I had the last time I was.
Oh yeah, well, the last time was like outside of any reason whatsoever.
Last time was my money, and I will never forget it because you actually had E United to beat Big.
Was it like 200 or something?
It was pretty good.
It was immense. It's pretty clear that Joe is not playing with neither his own money or real money at that. Let's move on to mine. I think mine's probably a little bit more safe, to say the least.
More sensible.
I just started from the bottom. I actually went the other way with the Ghosts thing. I have Mouse Sports to beat them with the handicap, so they have to win with 4 or more. I think that's when. I know what you guys said is. I mean, it's not unlikely that they'll surprise, but I just don't see them going very far against Mouse Sports. And then. This is kind of, compared to yours, Joe, this is like the borest slip ever. Going up, I got Liquid to beat G2, just the same issue, and then Big to beat INTC, which I actually think is the most secure bet, or the most secure matchup of all of them. So this puts me at like, I think 270 or something. Okay. So I'm anxious to see whether this time I can actually win money.
Yeah, I mean, with a safe one like that. But we said that last time, and then who did you get screwed by? Optic, right?
Optic, obviously. Who lost to Bravado in the opening.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. Like last time, I actually thought one of you was going to win because you went so pussy. Like that was insane. But yeah, I actually went fairly insensible this time as well. Like I didn't want to touch the fourth one that Joe has, Hellraisers versus Renegades, just because I felt like that was just a minefield. Like I could not pick between those two. So I just completely dodged that one. Instead, I went with Energy and North, who are similarly hard to pick from, hard to pick the winner from, but they both have played so close in basically all of their matches ever. Like I remember so many close matches between those two over the last year or so that I feel like it's going to happen again. So I just went with them playing basically double digits and more. So that I feel pretty safe from 1.6 odds for that. Or I feel like we're pretty good. Liquid versus G2, kind of the same thing. You both have that, right? So you guys have gone through it, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Ghost versus Mouse Sports, I just went with Mouse Sports as the winner because I feel like the odds are fairly good for quite a heavily favored matchup. And to close it out, I went the other way from the first one, Navi versus Order. I think Order are not going to get close with Navi. I think it's 7-16, 9 and less for the result.
Last time someone bet on an under round bet
that
on
was
Navi.
Me.
Yeah. Was that you against E United that actually ended up going through?
No,
because
that was Prof. Okay, never mind.
Prof actually made a bet where he bet sort of the same about Navi, which was an under bet. But then he ended up winning it because Navi lost.
Yeah, Navi lost big time.
All right.
This last time I went with this, I missed out on it by one round, and that was I think Opti Bravado.
Yeah. Let's see if that, and I'm mostly talking about myself. If I can break even within the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks of the year here, I'm not so confident about it. Let's bring our boy Hunden back on, the god himself. If you have any questions for him or the rest of the panel, now is the time to hit us with them. It's gonna be closing time soon. I wanted to ask you something actually, Nikolai. There was a question from Twitter. That I guess it kind of goes for all, but I wanted to ask you this. What's your favorite meta to abuse in CSGO history? Was it the Tech 9? So is there any one of them you remember the fondest?
The Tech 9 was really, really disgusting, and it was destroying the meta totally, in my opinion.
It seems so far away, man. It seems so long ago.
Exactly. But I think it was nice for the executes, because people did a lot of executes with the Tech 9s forced up, and then they did something crazy. I enjoyed that part, because then you could try to create something new. But I think the worst one so far, in my opinion, was the UMP one, where everyone was just buying UMP. They didn't need to play with M4 anymore. On the CT side, they could just play UMP. Especially Sybil was only playing UMP, and he was just wrecking everyone, and that was not funny to see, in my opinion.
And the gun sucks, right? That's my least favorite gun to use in the whole game, I think.
To be honest, I was so ahead of the meta. I used that gun from like the get-go of CS, and it hasn't changed since then. Like, it has been the same gun until like they actually changed it, like whatever it was, like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, and that's crazy to think. Like, it was out for 3 years, no one was using it, and out of nowhere, everyone started to use that one, and it was by far the best weapon in a long time, in my opinion.
All right. Asks you, Hun, I think if you'll go into coaching. We kind of touched a little bit about on it when we talked about your future away from alternative techs. We talked about becoming an agent, getting the cut on the player movements. There's also the coach thing. I don't think we really talked about that per se. I think it seems to many people that you probably fit pretty well in that role. Is that something you've considered?
Yeah, I did. I also got a few offers from good teams in Denmark, also some international teams who wanted me to coach them. But so far, I don't want to coach anyone. I want to play the game, and I still think I have something in me to show myself at least. But the coaching thing is also a thing I want to try out later on, but not right now.
Do you think you would be a little bit stuck because of the ruling that currently works?
Yeah, I guess so. I think I will start to miss the game a lot if I had to coach for 6 days each week for 6 or 7 hours. Yeah. I think it would be really hard for me in the beginning if I still feel I can do something in the game, and especially the teams who ask me, I think I still beat those teams sometimes. So that would not be funny for me right now.
So that's how you'd pick them. So as long as those teams start winning over you, or you get an offer for someone who can beat you, you'll join them.
Then I can start to respect them, and then I might coach them a little bit. I don't know. But if a top 5 team in the world was calling me like, you can be our coach now, then I might think about it, because then it's something different in my opinion.
Eric,
okay, can I ask one thing?
Go ahead.
This is tough. This is going to be a tough question, but do you feel like you would be up for that challenge in terms of like meta stuff? Because obviously the top teams play completely differently to, like, top 5 teams especially play completely differently to anything you see like below top 20 where you currently are and have been for a while. So do you feel like you would be up for that challenge and to kind of like get into a different mindset, obviously, because a lot of things change when you go from like the top 30 to the top 5 meta wise?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I totally agree with that. But I love to watch demos. I love to try to understand how the other teams is thinking about how they want to approach the game. So I think with a lot of work, and if I do something, I will do it 100%. So I will try to see as many demos as possible. I will work hard with my own team, and I would listen to them to see what they want me to do, because the coaching role is still like up to everything. What do the team need from the coach? And my strongest part will be for sure to help my own team to become even a better team, in my opinion.
Okay.
When was the last time Hunden played versus Navi? They could use a better coach.
Last time I played against Navi was with Tricked, where Simple was only playing with UMP.
So it doesn't really count since it was abuse, right?
Yeah, he abused it, man.
SilverX Jacob asks, do you think Vitality have a chance to make it to the major? That's an interesting one. They only barely made the closed qualifier on the 4th go, I think. Was it the last chance that they had where they went through?
It's very hard.
And if you look at how stacked the EU closed qualifiers
that's the thing. Only the closed qualifier. They're already going to have a very hard time going through that, and to make it to the top 8 there, and then to make it to the top 3 at least, to at least make it to that whatever 3rd place thing between minors. That's going to be very tough, especially for a fairly new team that they are.
Yeah, I think Vitality got something special because they got the Saibu guy. I think he can beat every team, and I think they will make it to the minor. But then it's a new LAN tournament, and all the 8 teams who is going to the minor will pretty much be favorite to get one of the 3 spots, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you have Mousesports there already, who's just instant. Unless they fluke the online part. They're instantly going to be the favorite there, so that's already one spot that you probably will not be able to reach. So like that's one spot gone just like that, and it just becomes so hard.
Yeah, I think the only locks out of the closed qualifier are Mousesports and North, and kind of like you have like those 2 as locks at the bottom, and then you probably have like Mixtora and I guess Fragsters now as locks, or locks at the bottom now with like the Fragsters roster changes and like just the fact that the Bialy's team is just a mix. Everywhere in between that is up for grabs as far as I'm concerned.
Gonna be difficult, definitely. Okay, let's pick the last question here. There was just one coming in here. Yeah, this is one that actually it's repeated a few times. What the next big team in Denmark is outside the top 5, and I guess that means locally. So not Astralis, Uptick North, Heroic, or Fragsters.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it will be a mix between Golden Gitte and Tricked, who can take the next step in Denmark. Of course, it's really, really hard to get the next step into the top 30, but we got some opportunities with Copenhagen Games, who got a bigger prize pool now, and normally if you make it to the quarters or semi at Copenhagen Games, then you make it into the top 30 as well. So I think they have some opportunities to do that in the new year if they stick together with their lineups right now.
All right. Cool. I guess that rounds out our show for the night. Hunden, thanks so much for coming on. And enjoy the biggest event or the last big event of the year in your hometown. How far is it to the arena from you?
10 minutes in a car, so it's pretty close. So
that's pretty great.
I wish. I wish.
It's not like did you guys see Oscar who had to drive all the way?
I did that last time when I went to Odense, yeah.
So he apparently missed his train from Prague, right? And then,
I think so, yeah.
And then had to drive all the way. I guess it was 12 hours.
I think he said it was 9. From me, it's like 12, and he's a lot closer.
If you've seen this car, I definitely wouldn't mind taking that through Germany. Going all that way. It's got a pretty great BMW. I think I remember that. So anyway, Hunden, thanks for joining us. Goes for you as well, Joe. Striker, I guess, too. Thanks for showing up for another episode of HLTV Confirmed. We will be back soon. Thanks for tuning in, everyone in the chat, for asking questions. The guys on Twitter. It's been a great show. Thanks, everyone, and good night.
Later.
Good night.